Hi everybody, it's Mr. B, Hayfield Secondary School Middle School engineering teacher. This is a video that is going to demonstrate how we're going to cut out the wings for our balsa wood glider that we've been working on. So before you start this video assumes that you've completed all of the quizzes, you've completed all of your design, and you've reviewed it with me, and we've made any tweaks to it to get the best performance out of it. Then I also have printed out your design on legal size paper like that. That's part of it, okay? And so it assumes you've done all that stuff and you're ready to start cutting out your wing. Now, I'm going to turn the camera down because this is a demo video, so it's going to be down most of the time, and I'll just be describing what I'm doing. So the things that you're going to need, I'm going to turn the camera down, okay? You are going to need one of these cutting mats here, okay? This cutting mat, I have them in the classroom. We haven't used this before. We're using some new tools and materials with this project. This is kind of a soft vinyl type mat. It's really great for cutting on. And sometimes these mats have been used for other things and have glue and tape and things on them. When you get one of these mats, make sure it doesn't have a glue blobs or tape, residue tape on it. If it does, bring it up to me. I will use this thing and I will scrape it off because you don't want those tape blobs and things getting in your way while you're working. So you have a nice cutting mat here. Of course, you'll need something to cut with. You will need this hobby, it's called a hobby knife. Brand name is X-Acto. You might have heard of these before. These are very, very sharp. It's kind of like a razor blade on the end of a metal handle. They're very easy to use. You just hold them like a pencil. Do not grip them like that. You just literally hold them like a pencil so you'll have really good control. These are very sharp. They will cut you if you do something silly with it. Do not let it cut your fingers. Just hold it in your hand like that. And when you're not using it, put the cap back on, set it to the side. Of course, you need your balsa wood for the wing. This comes from the kit. Please note how thin and fragile it is. We have to be very careful with this. More about that in a second. You will need a straight edge. You also call them rulers. We're using it as a straight edge today. You will need a pair of scissors. Enough said. You're going to need a glue stick. You are going to need your wing design. This video is just about the wing here. You see that? A lot of glare in the camera. Okay, that's my wing design I've cut out. And you're going to need just a real small amount of masking tape. First thing we want to do is we want to secure the workpiece down to the mat. We don't want it moving around while we're trying to cut it. We have to be very, very careful and very, very deliberate. And we're going to try to eliminate possibilities for error. One of those possibilities would be this wood moving around while we're trying to cut it. So we're going to take a couple of small pieces of balsa wood, really small. I know sometimes you guys have trouble tearing off small pieces, but really just like that, just a couple inches. And we're going to put it down on the edge. Do not press it down super hard because you don't want it to stick too good so that when you peel it off, you don't want it to tear the balsa wood. And I'm just putting a piece at each end, all right? And you might actually even want to put it up in the corner because I don't want it to get in the way of the pattern I put down. So when I put my pattern down on here, this is my wing pattern. Notice I cut it out really, really closely on the bottom edge, but that was the only edge I did. And the reason for that is that bottom edge is straight, and I can line it up straight and even with the bottom of my balsa wood. Now I don't have to make that cut. The balsa wood is already straight on that edge. That saves me some time and it reduces margin of error. On this edge over here, I'm lining up this edge, use a pencil for a pointer, this edge of the pattern with this edge of the balsa wood. That's another cut that I don't have to make. So look for, I know everybody's wings are different. A lot of them might look kind of like this, but look for opportunities where you can just line your pattern up with the existing edges of the balsa wood and reduce the number of cuts you need to make. All right? So get it kind of lined up. Move up a little bit. Okay. Oops, sorry. There we go. Now, I don't want my paper to be moving around either. I don't want to put a whole bunch of tape down on it. So we're going to use one of these glue sticks. I know you guys have used these a million times. And we're going to put just a little bit of glue on this paper. I mean a little bit. If you put a ton of it on here, because we're going to use this to press the paper down to the wood and keep it from moving around while we're trying to cut. If you put a ton of glue on here, you're going to leave glue residue on the wood. We don't want that. So we're putting a very small amount. I'm barely pressing on this. I'm not putting any downward pressure. I'm just lightly putting some glue around the edges and in the middle. That's it, okay? Just a real little bit. Now I'm going to line this up, and for me, it's going to work out really well to have that bottom edge lined up with the bottom edge of the balsa wood, and this edge over here lined up with this edge of the balsa wood. I don't have to make those cuts. I'm going to press it down. All right, everything's kind of locked in place. It's not going to move around. Now, a lot of you, I'm sure, because what I told you to do, you cut real tight on all of these lines here. So you cut the exact shape of your wing, and that is fine. I am trying something a little bit different here. I know that there's a lot of glare here. I can improve that. There we go. That's much better. I'm going to try something a little different here that might actually make our lives a little bit easier when we're cutting this thing. And I am going to try to cut through the paper and the balsa wood at the same time. That way, it's less cutting of the paper to do, and I think we'll get a more accurate result. So I'm just going to start down on this edge. Now, again, this hobby knife is very, very sharp. Always leave the cap on it when you're not using it. Now I'm just holding it like a pencil, and I don't try to cut through the whole thing at one time. I'm going down that line with just gentle pressure. And you can feel it cutting through the paper and the wood. And I might have to go over this, like 2 or 3 times or more. You're not trying to go all the way through it with one cut. All right, that's just about all the way through. I'm going to move on to the rest of it here. And don't, you can move your mat around so you get a good cutting position. The most accurate way is, not to be cutting side or up, or is just to be cutting straight down. So I'm just turning my piece here so that I can pull the knife toward me, and really nice and slow. This first cut is the most important because you're cutting a groove in the wood. And I'm just following this line. You're cutting a groove in the wood that your cuts after this will tend to follow. So I'm really, really, really taking my time. I came off the line a little bit, and that's okay. Just, you want to be right on that line. We can use a little bit of sandpaper. We're not going to do much sanding because this balsa wood is almost paper thin. And I'm just coming down. You can't see that. Let me raise this up a little bit. All right. And I'm all the way down at the other end. And that's just my first cut. I'm probably going to have to do that 2, 3, 4 times. I'm not pressing down really hard. The reason you don't want to press down really hard, you have less control of the hobby knife if you're pressing down really hard, and mistakes are a lot easier to make. So I'm going to go down it again. And the second cut, you can feel, is kind of following that groove you cut with the first cut. Again, light pressure. I'm not bearing down really, really hard. That's the second cut. Let's see how many it takes. I think it's going to take 3 or 4. Now, I'm doing this faster than you guys probably will because, let's be honest, I have a bit more experience doing these kind of things. So don't try to keep up with my pace. You take all the time that you need. And Since it's cut out so well now, I can peel this paper off. And we'll see if it's cut all the way through. And it will be cut through in some places and not in others. You can see it's releasing up here, but it's still not releasing there. So I'm just going to run the knife slowly. You hear it pop. Don't know if the mic picked that up. And then down on this end. Really carefully. It still hasn't released. It is harder to cut across the grain than with the grain. The grain is, the grain of the wood that goes this way. This one I'm cutting across, so it's always harder to cut across the grain than with the grain. All right, that's probably like 5 or 6 cuts it took for that. And there we go. All right, teeny little edge right there. All right, there's our wing. But we need this wing in 2 halves because remember, we're going to put an angle on this thing. So we're going to lay our pattern down on top of it again for just a second. And see this line going down the middle? That is showing remember they called it the root chord? So I'm going to lay this down. If you have to put a little bit more glue on it to get it to stick, little glue stick, I can move this out of my way right now. Don't bust up this wood or throw it away. I always hang on to all of my project scraps until I'm done with the project because you never know when you might find something useful to do with that, so hang on to that. Now, we got to cut this in 2 so that we can put an angle on it. And we're going to line it up with the straight edge. You definitely want to use a straight edge on this. You might even want to use a straight edge on any cuts on your wing that are straight. If you have, like I could have used one down on this edge to line up my ruler or straight edge and follow that. That minimizes possibility for error. I freehanded it. When you're doing this, make sure to ask me questions. Say, hey, Mr. B, how do you think I should be doing this? We're going to be doing this in the shop in small groups. All right, so I'm lining this up very carefully. All right. The way you know you're lined up on a line perfectly is put your pencil, or in this case, your hobby knife, right on the line, and then push the ruler up to it. All right, if you try to line up the ruler, sometimes you'll be on it, sometimes you're off. So I'm putting the knife right where I want it. You want this to be oh so perfect. All right, now I'm just going to start at the top. I'm putting a lot of pressure down on the ruler. I don't want anything to move here. And I'm doing a gentle cut. 1, 2, 3. Now, before I cut all the way through, I want to try something here. I was thinking, I built a project like this before, and we intentionally did not cut all the way through. We cut through it most of the way, and see, look at that. I'm able to bend it. It didn't cut through the back side, but I can bend it and get the angle that I want. Isn't that cool? All right. So I just dragged my knife on the top side, 3 times? Cut most of the way through, not all the way through. And I have my wing, so I can go ahead and set the angles with it. And I still only have 1 piece of wood, so that's going to kind of maybe minimize the possibility for errors as well. But I'm not sure how if glue is going to get in there. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to cut all the way through it, and I'll tell you why in just a second. See, the gap is on the back, on the front side. The front goes onto the fuselage, and there's no glue that's going to get in between these 2 pieces. So I guess we could try it. This is a new kit for us, so I'm going to go ahead and cut all the way through. That's 4 times, 5 times. There we go. It took 5 times. Okay. Now these should be identical or super close to identical because your wings are symmetric. So now I have my two wings, all right? So that's it for cutting out your wings. That's all this video was intended to demonstrate. And I'm about to knock a bunch of stuff off my desk. I'm going to do a couple more videos in a few minutes for gluing the wings to the fuselage. But actually, we're going to build the fuselage first. And I'm going to set my wings aside. So remember those heavy-duty folders I had you build? This is a really good time to put that in that heavy-duty folder and protect it. We'll talk about the fuselage in just a minute. See you soon.